Hello and welcome to the Astro Garden, a place for astrologers to chat all things astro. I'm your host Janessa of By Jove Astrology. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, hi, welcome to eclipse season. We've got the Pisces eclipse coming in hot tomorrow, Tuesday. Today is Monday. It is September 16th, and the moon is already in Pisces, so the energy is building. This eclipse is taking place in the later degrees of Pisces, but yeah, we're almost there. The moon just moved into Pisces this morning, and we are in it. We are in the thick of it. I know I talked about eclipses last week, but I wanted to kind of revisit them. There's just so much to talk about with eclipses, and I find that this is one of the transits that it's really easy to look back and evaluate where you were the last time that the eclipses were happening in these signs. And that it's just really easy to quickly pick up on themes that might be at play again this go round. The eclipses feel really like this constant churning, and I think I've heard someone, I can't remember who exactly said it on maybe Instagram, but about how eclipses really help us move forward in life and accelerate. The things happen quickly during eclipses, especially related to the houses that they're in, and depending on your chart, they can affect other houses too. So yeah, they're kind of like this change agent. And something I've been thinking about, related but unrelated, and it's going to take me a minute to unpack this, so bear with me. I've been thinking about Pisces 1, the first decan of Pisces, and the tarot card that is related to that as the Eight of Cups. I'm not a tarot aficionado. I am very much a novice, but I like to use it for myself, and I've started incorporating it more into my astrological practice, pulling cards for readings. Sometimes I've done this in the past and shared it with a client, depending on how it felt. But I've been doing more sharing of it with clients and trying to build my confidence in my own interpretations of tarot. I love that it's a visual language. And it always just reminds me so much of being in college and learning art history, and a lot of what we did was taking an image and breaking it down, and how does your eye travel through the image, what is the symbolism, what are the archetypes at play, everything, all of the details matter, right? Down to the last color and texture. And so it's really kind of fun to look at tarot in a similar way, and break it down that way. So yeah, the first decan of Pisces Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, but the first decan is ruled by Saturn. And the Eight of Cups is the card assigned to this decan, or most associated with it. Different people have different interpretations, but this is the one that a lot of different groups are working with. And I have thought about this decan a lot. This is the decan of my ascendant. I've written a piece about this that will come out later in actually in 2025 once we get to the first decan of Pisces, or once the sun makes it there. So I've written that already and submitted it, sent it out. I think it was around the summer solstice that was the deadline for that piece. But something that's been in my mind since I wrote that is, and has only become more clear recently in the symbolism of the number 8, is just that this decan and the 8 of Cups in particular is just associated with like this very cyclical journey. I think a lot of different people who have written on the decans refer to this as like, I think they all have different names for it, but essentially it comes down to like the mystic's path, or the wandering journey, this kind of like this journey that doesn't have a clear beginning, doesn't have a clear end goal, and that I think is really looks a lot like an infinity symbol. And the infinity symbol looks a lot like the number 8. So I was doing just a little bit of research this morning. I don't always like to plan out these talks a lot, but this one felt like I needed to do a little bit of research, because I was curious about what the other decans were that were associated with the 8 and the different suits that we have. So cups are the water suit, or the water element. Then we have swords, which are related to air. We have pentacles, which are related to earth. And then we have wands, which are related to fire. So in researching the 8, it turns out that all of the 8s are the first decan of every mutable sign, which is just, chef's kiss. Perfect. Whoever came up with this tarot thing was a genius, right? So the 8 of Wands is the first decan of Sagittarius. The 8 of Pentacles is the first decan of Virgo. And the 8 of Swords is the first decan of Gemini. And I think that that's just, so indicative of like the mutability, right? Like the first decan of a mutable sign being like, yeah, we're changing now, and change doesn't end. And in Pisces 1, the first decan of Pisces, being ruled by Saturn, like one of the key phrases that's coming to mind for me is that the only constant, Saturn, is change. So if you look at the card, if you look at like the traditional depictions of that 8 of Cups, there's 8 cups stacked on what looks like a shoreline. And then there is a figure with their back to the viewer walking away from them. Usually they're wearing like a red cloak. Maybe they have a walking stick in their hand. And then, they're setting out away from this scene that looks kind of abundant. Like the cups look gold oftentimes. They look, it looks like something like chalices or goblets that would be used to hold wine. So like, one interpretation could be that this was like a scene of like abundance and maybe like a party that was happening. So this figure's walking away along, and like where they're headed, the path that they're headed down looks rocky and uncertain. It looks like it's nighttime, and it looks like the moon is out above, overlooking this scene. In some decks, it almost looks like it could even be like an eclipse. It looks like there's like a crescent. There's looks like there's some overlap with the moon. It's not just like a straight up full moon. There's like this crescent that's kind of like denoted. So there's some mystery there to that too. But yeah, I keep coming back to this decan being so much like the infinity symbol and being so much like this journey that, this person could be in the card, could be starting out like for the first time on this journey. But it's also like there's so much that we don't know about the image. It could be that like this person's been here before, and like, the eight, the infinity symbol, kind of like showing that like we ultimately always come back to this place and we ultimately always decide to leave again in search of something else. And this is something, everyone experiences, not just people with placements there. But when you do have a placement there, it might be like a vibe or like an energy that you relate to a little bit more heavily in your life, or that resonates or is more repeated. So yeah, that energy just feels really eclipsy to me. Like the eclipses happening every 8 years, roughly. It just, the eights. It's the eights, you guys. And how they keep perpetuating like this movement, whether you want to like look at it as like progressive and going forward or not. I'm not so sure these days. Like, but there's like this constant churning and like this constant movement. If you think about like the nodes being those polarities again, and like the infinity symbol tracing its figure 8 through, like from one end of those to the other. Yeah, just like the never-ending journey. And then it's constantly moving, and then it's constantly also moving through the different houses in your birth chart. We can also think of the eclipses, and like especially in Pisces, being tied to the moon, with like the moon being the tarot card associated with Pisces. And I feel like that's really just doubling down on like the cyclical nature and how things ebb and flow like the tide. So yeah, I was doing some more reflection and journaling about the previous eclipses in Pisces and Virgo. Oh, and side note, I also saw on Twitter, I know it was Jessica Irene, pointed out that when we had the last time we had the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo was when when Pluto was moving into Capricorn. So how odd is it that we also have this happening again with Aquarius making its final moves into, with Pluto making its final moves into Aquarius. It's pretty interesting reflection there. It kind of like, I find, and I'll unpack this too, is that it's adding a layer to it's obviously adding a layer to the interpretation, and it's definitely, I'm seeing the themes of my Capricorn house being highlighted in all of these eclipse stories that I have from the last time the North Node was in Pisces, and then also the last time the North Node was in Virgo. So, looking back, the North Node was in Pisces starting in March of 2006 through February of 2008. That's when those eclipses started. And those are the ones that are going to maybe more closely echo themes happening with this set of eclipses with the North and South nodes where they are. So for me, I was graduating high school, like May of 2006, which means I also started college. And during this time, Pluto was entering Capricorn in my 11th house. So there was a lot happening in terms of like, becoming an adult, leaving home, for like the first real time. I went and studied abroad. I have the ruler of my 7th house is Mercury in the 9th house. It's the ruler of my Virgo house. So there's like a lot of themes of like long distance travel and higher education. One thing that really stood out to me that will come into play is that I accumulated a lot of books during this time. I mean, it was college, obviously, but I was an art major, but I double majored in German studies, German language and literature. So I accumulated a lot of like non-textbook books, like more like literature, like old old texts, old German texts, old Norse sagas, lots and lots of German literature going all the way back as far as like the German language goes. So, and then, stuff that's more modern too and more having to do with the 1900s. But anyway, I accumulated a lot of books. And, as far as like that friend group house goes, like the 11th house goes for me, that was a huge shift. I had some really good friends in high school. College was more difficult. It was kind of a lonely time. I don't feel like I ever found like a group that I totally jived with. Part of that is like on me in terms of being an introvert. And part of that is just like not being in spaces that like led me to my people. So yeah, a very big, death and rebirth, I would say, of my groups and networks that would fall into that 11th house. And then if we move forward then through time, 8 years to March of 2015 through February of 2017, when the nodes are reversed from where they were in 2006 through 2008. This was also a huge time of change for me. I think I shared in the last episode, I think I thought that the eclipse series in 2015 started in September with Virgo, but there was actually a Pisces eclipse back in March of 2015. And that coincided with like this amazing opportunity that I had to travel with an amazing group of friends that I did find shortly before this. We had the chance to go to India. One of our friends in the group was getting married, and he was from there. His family, well, were so generous and welcomed us there, and helped us arrange all of our travel and our stays, and really just made this incredible trip possible. And we did this trip as like this huge group. There were times where we like split off into like smaller groups, but for the most part, this was like, for most of us, I think on average we were there for about 3 weeks. And we yeah, we just got to do this incredible trip together and go all around the continent, all around, or the subcontinent, all around the country. Anyone who's been to India knows that it is massive, and that it's so different from place to place. You could spend years there and not see everything. Just again, that ruler of the seventh house being in the ninth house for me, like, just, I think that was a really key thing at play. Mercury in particular, having to do with travel and learning and all of the above. But yeah, I found this really good group of friends and this tight group of friends, and it was really easy. And it, like, looking at it now, comparing the two time periods, it's crazy to me to see like the parallels and the overlapping themes, especially with that Capricorn house. And then, I think I talked about last time all of the changes that happened with like deciding to move in with my now husband, getting pregnant, having a baby, changing careers, getting married. But one of the things that really struck me just this morning is that when we moved in together, I had all of my stuff, from my little studio apartment, and I had all of these books that I had accumulated. So when we moved into this little house together, especially when we found out almost immediately that we had a baby joining us shortly, a lot of my things got moved to the basement for storage. And after, the first couple months of living there, first year of living there, we found out that the basement is not a great place to store things in this house, or was not, because a lot of stuff got moldy and nasty and ruined. I had to throw away like so many books. It still pains me a little bit to talk about this. At the time, it was like there were so many things going on that it was sad, but also like just very necessary and needed to happen quickly with getting ready for the baby to come. But looking back afterwards, it's like, damn, that was like, it was like this symbol of all of this knowledge and like all of these things I had done. And there's probably a lot of like ego wrapped up in that too, of like, yeah, I read all these books and I learned all these things, and like that makes, in some way makes me feel better about myself, or is part, maybe too much of a part of my identity. But yeah, I had to toss like almost all of the books that I had accumulated in college, almost all of my German literature books. So many of these I think of, like, especially now that I'm studying astrology and looking at archetypes, there's so many things I would love to revisit, and maybe I'll start building my collection back up again. But yeah, it's so interesting that like I literally accumulated these things when the North Node was in my first house. And then when the south node was in my seventh house, opposite where it was when I accumulated them, I had to let them go and like literally just release them and throw them away. um, so, and I'm sure that that is just like, just one example and like a stand-in or like a, I'm short on my words today, but it's just an example, one example of probably many things that I had accumulated, whether it's like material or, you know, unseen during that time period in 2006 to 2008 that I had to let go of when it got to 2015 and into 2017. Just like that cycle, like from the north node to the south node and back to the north node. And, you know, we're not usually ever like right in the middle where the infinity symbol crosses itself. We're usually somewhere else on that journey. That's like just a blip on the journey. So yeah, now that the north node is back in my, or about to be, you know, it's an out of sign eclipse. It's not exact yet, but it's symbolic of the north node being in my first house again. It's very interesting to think about what I might pick up and, you know, I guess another way to frame it is, what was I releasing in 2006 and to 2008 too? You know, leaving home to go to college, probably letting go a lot of like those one-on-one friendships as well, which kind of echoes that group's house with the Capricorn house, my 11th house, where Pluto was going. And I don't think I've even begun to wrap my head around what that means with the 12th house now with Pluto entering Aquarius. You know, that's an unseen realm, and we'll take other ways of processing, I'm sure, to look at. But it's really cool to like look back at these two eclipse seasons in relation to each other, the 2006 through 2008 versus like the 2015 to 2017. I feel like I've uncovered another little piece of that puzzle. And yeah, it's interesting to look back to where we've been and how that might inform where we're going. So with that, I think I'm feeling like I've said what I would like to say today. Again, I encourage you to take the time to like journal. This is like, it's kind of a big deal, you guys. I think it's worth your 5 minutes of like remembering, what was I up to in 2006 to 2008, and what was I up to in 2015 to 2017, and what are the parallels, or what are like the things that, what are the major themes and how do they change between those two time periods. I'm excited for me because I think at the very least it means I might get to go abroad again for like the first time in I don't even know how long. Too long for a 9th houser. So with that, I will leave you. Thank you so much for listening. If you are liking what you're hearing, please take a moment and just drop me a note, leave a review, like and subscribe, all of the things that us creatives and artists, I refuse to use the word content creator because we're not creating content, we're creating something of value, of art that's not just, you know, an advertisement. And so many of us are doing this like for free. So if it has helped you in any way, if it's even just made you stop and think, or, made you giggle, let me know. And let others know. All right. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I hope that you all have a great week. Take it easy. Let these eclipses wash over you and just do some reflection. For more information about my work, you can find me at By Jove Astro on Instagram, at By Jove Astrology on Twitter, and the best place to find me of all is at my website, byjoveastrology.com.